What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. The last battle of World War II was in fact the first for many troops from Taiwan. But 80 years on, their stories and even their numbers remain unknown. One of many lingering mysteries from the final days of the most consequential conflict in world history. Bryn Thomas reports.
On June 22, 1945, the last major battle of World War II ended after nearly 3 months of fierce attritional fighting.
The bloodiest battle of the Pacific War has ended in victory for the Americans on Okinawa. 330 miles from the home islands of Japan, the Stars and Stripes are hoisted on this most vital strategic base.
It's just a classic example of a kind of a violent climax to just this catastrophic event that had swept through Asia and the Pacific. It gives us a little bit of a preview of what the invasion of the Japanese home islands would have been like.
Okinawa, strategic link in the Ryukyu chain, an island strong point in the southern defense system guarding the Japanese mainland.
太平洋战争里面最惨烈的算是日本本土的决战，就是冲绳战役。1945年3月打到6月的3个月左右的这个冲绳战役是非常惨烈的。那当年被称作叫做钢铁风暴，因为美军是用大量的炮弹，几乎把整个那个冲绳夷平。
The battle involved around 1.3 million Allied personnel, U.S. Army, Navy, Marine, and Air Force units, against 120,000 Imperial Japanese defenders. It was the last major battle of the Pacific War, and the first with significant involvement of Taiwanese soldiers in combat, following the start of conscription in Taiwan in January 1945.
Over 200,000 Taiwanese actually served in the Imperial Japanese Army in a wide sense during the war years. Not all of them were in active military service. I think that's more like about 80,000 or so, but others did work that essentially served the wider purpose of the Imperial Japanese Army.
Daily militarization of Taiwanese young men until 1938, when a law is passed that Taiwanese can be volunteer soldiers or volunteer gunzoku, kind of laborers or attached to the military. And then the actual formal draft of Taiwanese men doesn't begin until much later in the war.
The battle cost the Americans nearly 13,000 lives, about 7% of the nearly 200,000 troops on the front lines. Japanese losses were far worse, with over 110,000 killed, or roughly 92% of their forces. An unknown number of Taiwanese were among the Japanese dead, but how many served, let alone how many died, remains a mystery. A lone monument on the island lists just 34 Taiwanese names, a figure most experts believe is far from accurate.
所以这个在整个加起来，根据那个冲绳大学那一位教授叫右吉圣清教授，他的那个记录来讲，他认为至少应该破1000人，在冲绳死亡的台湾人应该要破1000人，但是所以说这个还需要再继续清查。那因为台湾人就是说战后其实跟冲绳是隔离的状态啦。
Both Taiwan and Okinawa were part of the Japanese Empire during the war, and Taiwanese war dead were recorded alongside other Japanese casualties.
那在冲绳战争里面，其实，我们在台湾之塔目前看到的是34个台湾人的名字被刻在上面。那当年应该是因为通常来讲会被刻在上面，但是又没有家属提出那个刻名字的需求的时候，通常都是他们在一些那个作战部队的名单里面找到的名字是那种3个字的，是那种那个中式的姓名。
After the war, when control of Taiwan was handed over to the Republic of China, those records, the ones that weren't destroyed, remained in Japan.
其实台湾人最那个参战最完整的这个资料是在日本本土，但是如果台湾这边没有官方相对应的官方的机构去申请把这些资料抄回台湾的话，那基本上我们都只能够靠这种那个口访记录或者是家属的一些那个口述才知道说可能某些人在海外战死，但是没有什么资料会留下来。
The nature of the fighting on Okinawa has made recovering remains extremely difficult. Japanese soldiers and Okinawan civilians were often forced to fight to the death in caves or kill themselves, sometimes with their families, rather than surrender.
As the war goes further north and gets closer to Japan, and we get to this, greater level of savagery that the war had become, the Americans are using more and more of one of humanity's oldest weapons, fire. And what I mean is, of course, the flame tanks that I mentioned, but the flamethrower teams, strap the tank to your back, and here you are with that hose, and you're just hosing down caves or any other fighting position.
Against some of the most fanatical opposition ever encountered, the Americans blast their way forward grenade by grenade. The whole island is honeycombed with defenses, and the enemy has to be ferreted out one at a time.
80 years after the war, the remains of dozens of people are still found each year. Some are soldiers, others are among the more than 100,000 civilians killed during the battle, roughly a third of Okinawa's wartime population. Around 1,400 sets of remains are unclaimed, awaiting identification through DNA testing.
It was absolutely such a mess in 1945 that I think it's hard for us to wrap our minds around it. It's an environmental mess, how battered that landscape was, and on top of it, the weather, of course, the rain had created quagmires of mud. A lot of the Japanese are underground, and so they experience subterranean deaths, or they're sealed in caves.
A mop-up team, using phosphorus, flame, and small arms fire, reduces a camouflaged Japanese position.
In the aftermath of the battle, and later the entire war, U.S. forces quickly shifted from combat to humanitarian efforts. Japan turned its focus to rebuilding, and in Taiwan, political realities, like the Chinese Civil War and the Cold War, took precedence. There was little appetite to confront inconvenient truths, especially the possibility that Taiwanese troops took part in war crimes and atrocities. No side had the political will to fully reckon with the past.
Nobody's big concern was in the immediate aftermath commemoration and figuring out remains and all that, unless it's their own. Their idea was let's move on. Everybody's idea was let's move on. And if you're Okinawan, the idea is I'm just happy I survived.
而且那个台湾这边的政府基本上也不鼓励，甚至会去阻止台湾人去处理这个战前的这些相关的这些资讯，也就是代表说很多的那个战没者他的遗嘱他没办法去找。说他的家人是在哪边战死的，也没办法去了解，就是说去跟那个冲绳县政府去跟他们提起这种需求，就是说可能能不能把名字刻在上面。
80 years on, the World War II generation is fading. Taiwanese now join Okinawa memorials, reading the names of their war dead, a small but overdue tribute. Yet many questions remain unanswered. The full number of Taiwanese who served and died is still a historical mystery, and advocates press Japan to release wartime records while urging Taiwan to confront and fully reckon with its past.
等上一辈的结束了，下一辈如果说对这段历史不了解，这段历史就完全就是从我们的记忆里面，那个国族记忆里面就会被整个移除掉。所以我们为什么要去带团，每年带团去参加这个冲绳的纪念仪式？其实也是让这个团员参加的，因为参加团员是来自台湾各个阶层、各个领域的一些专家，我们让他们看一下。
The Second World War remains the most important story in modern history. Yet, in one of its final chapters, the Battle of Okinawa, the deaths of Taiwanese soldiers remain a mystery. Without working to uncover and preserve this past, knowledge of Taiwan's role in the world's biggest conflict risks being lost forever. James Lin, Ed Moon, Jeffrey Chen, and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
And thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out the UK's Armed Forces Day celebrations featuring parades and air displays. I'm Eric Gao. Take care. We'll see you next time.